In this lesson video, day 1.3, we're taking a look at place value, rounding, and order of operations. So this chart here at the beginning is actually going to be a helpful starting point. All right? And in this chart, you can kind of see where we're reminding you of the labels for certain place values. So in any number, the number to the left of the decimal, the very next number to the left of the decimal is a 1, or the ones place. Then after that, you would have, as soon as you get 10 ones, you move into the next place value. Ignore the bell, please. And then on into hundreds, after you have 10 tens. And then after you have the next one, will be 1,000, so on and so forth as we move down the line. But after the decimal, okay, it's like you are decreasing by powers of 10. So it's not subtracting, it's dividing by tens every time. So this next one out of after the decimal is like that digit out of 10 or over 10, which we would read that as 1/10 with a th, which is why we call that first decimal place tenths. Same thing, we add a 0 to the bottom of that fraction, making it hundredths, and then thousandths. These are all like they're a fraction with that denominator. So that's how you can remember how to read those. But that chart is going to be kind of important. And so below this video in Canvas, you should see an actual PDF copy of the notes so you can kind of keep track of that chart. All right? So in the first set of examples, I've got these already pre-written for you. So as the video goes, pause the video so you can maybe copy these down. But in example 1, you want to write the place value of the underlined digit. All right? So the underlined digit here is this 6. And that 6 is 4 place values away from the decimal. And so you should remember that's the thousands. We would read this 42,106,279, and then so on and so forth with the decimal. So this number is in the thousandths place. Thousands, sorry, no th, thousands. All right. Then the next number, a decimal number. This first one, let me go back to that, sorry for the jump. This is the tenths place out of 10. It's like 0 out of 10, another 0 out of 100, there's 2 zeros, and then 0 out of 1,000 for the next one here. So this 2 is like 0002, or just 2. Out of the next place value over, which would be 10,000. But I want the 7, so the next one over is 7. Out of the next place value would be 100,000. So the answer for the place value of the underlined 7 is 100 thousandths. So as we move on, we're also going to look at problems where you have to round each number to the indicated place value, going back to remembering how to round. So in this example, the 7 is underlined. All right, we're going to round to that place value. Well, that place value is the 10,000s place value. So numbers to the left of that rounded value are going to show up again unless we have to round on into the next place value over. But we should not, because even if I round the 7 up, it's still going to be less than 10, so it'll stay there. So I'm going to keep my 1 in the millions place. I'm going to keep my 2 in the 100,000s place. But then I'm going to look really just at those 3 numbers, actually just those 2 numbers, sorry, these 2 numbers. And if I look at that as just a 2-digit number, and I ask the question, is 79 closer to 70 or 80? You should be able to answer it, it's closer to 80. So I'm going to change just those 2 digits to 80. And then I bring down zeros for everything else up to the decimal point. You do not need to include the decimal point when you're rounding place values in that whole number portion. Okay, so this rounds to 1,280,000. Okay. Moving on to the next one, our decimal value that we're rounding to this 9 place value there, that is in the thousandths place. This is the tenths place. This is the 100ths place. So this is the 1,000ths place. Okay, 9 is in the thousandths. So the 134.2 definitely show up again. Now, the next one over, I'm not going to write the 0 yet because this 9 has a 6 following it. And if you think of that as a two-digit number, is 96 closer to 90, or the next 10 up would be 100, that's closer to 100. So I have to write it as 10 to round that place value there. I have to include the 0 to show that I've rounded to that place value. Otherwise, it looks like I rounded to a different place value. Okay? And then after that, we are going to take a look at order of operations, Pemdas. But I want to give you some clarification on this because every year I talk to students and they end up doing something incorrectly because you've misremembered something from a previous class. First, parentheses means any grouping symbol. So the P stands for parentheses. Okay, parentheses are any grouping symbols. Like that. The E stands for exponents, which means powers, like something to the third or fourth or something like that. And then multiply and divide are what the M and D stand for. And I put them together for a very important reason. We always go left to right for multiply, divide. Okay, so that means you might actually divide before you multiply if we're going left to right. The same thing is true for addition and subtraction. I'm grouping those together. Okay, for adding and subtracting, you group those together because sometimes you might subtract before you add. So let's work on some examples. The directions on these kind of problems will just say simplify. And so we're going to stick to our PEMDAS, our order of operations. And so in this first example 3a, you'll see that in parentheses we have an exponent. That means this operation is what I do first. 2 to the second power means 2 times 2. You're multiplying the base number 2 by itself twice. So that becomes minus 4 then. And so I'm going to write everything else that I haven't used yet. Okay. Then I'm going to still do what's inside parentheses. So I'm going to still bring down my 2 plus 6, but I'm not going to write parentheses now because when I do the subtraction in parentheses, 5 minus 4, that's just 1. The operation between 6 and parentheses is a multiply. So I make it 6 times 1, 6, and then my dot for multiplying times 1. And we do a multiplying first. 6 times 1 is 6. Then I can write down my addition, and my final answer is 8. Okay? Now, some of the most challenging problems that we do with PEMDAS is when I write fractional values like this, or fractional operations. You need to remember that this fraction means division. So really, I could think of this as the top portion, parentheses, 4 minus 3 to the third, divided by the bottom portion, 2 times 5 minus 9. Now, we could think of it that way. You don't have to rewrite it that way every time, but it does help to understand that there really are parentheses here. So we're going to do what has been grouped together by that fraction bar. So first, we're going to do this 3 to the third. Remember, 3 to the third means 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times itself 3 times. So the top portion is now 4 minus 3 times 3 times 3 is 27, all over. In the bottom parentheses, we can actually do an operation in this one as well. We're going to multiply before we subtract. So 2 times 5 is 10, and then I've got a minus 9. And then I continue simplifying. We have 2 parentheses still, even though they're not drawn in there. They are grouped by the fraction line. So when I do 4 minus 27, I get a negative 23. You might get negatives with some of these problems. And on the bottom, 10 minus 9 is just 1. Well, Well, anything divided by 1 is just itself, so my answer is negative 23. Please remember things like a negative times a negative is a positive. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. These are just a few examples like what you will see on the assignment. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask.